Joining us now to break down the latest developments regarding the coronavirus outbreak is Jennifer Franco, an anchor reporter here at One America News. So Jennifer, over the past couple days, we've actually seen a lot of developments, not only when it comes to the government's response, but the states as well. There's been a lot of moving parts, and the one that I want to focus on right now is Congress's efforts to really provide relief right now to the American people. The small business loans that they initially offered in that $2.3 trillion package are now coming to an end, but Congress is still working to get things done. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it looks like the battle for that additional funding, Alex, is going to head into next week. The Senate was unable to reach a deal when they met during a pro forma session yesterday. And ultimately, Senator Mitch McConnell, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, chose not to bring up the bill for that additional $250 billion in funding for the Small Business Emergency Loan Program. The Democrats ultimately blocked Republicans from pushing that through last week, and it put this situation into a stalemate. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell spoke out against Democrats yesterday. He criticized them for ultimately not letting the program reopen, and he said that he was really surprised. It was surreal that Democrats are basically signaling that they don't support workers and small businesses. And just to give you a breakdown of what the money entails exactly. So the $350 billion that came from the $2.2 trillion, like you mentioned, that ran out on Thursday, according to the Small Business Administration. So Congress is pushing for an additional $250 billion to replenish the program. Democrats want to basically add, so Republicans want just a clean bill with the $250 billion. Democrats, on the other hand, they're asking for, on top of that, an additional $100 billion for hospitals and then $150 billion for states and food assistance. So that's where we stand right now.
And Jennifer, it is frustrating to me right now because I know that there's a lot of Americans going without paychecks, a lot of people who are very fearful about how they're going to make rent next month, buy groceries, even with those stimulus checks right now, and especially acknowledging the fact that a lot of those small businesses that you're talking about are going without incomes right now. So it's a scary time for a lot of Americans, and to see stagnation on Congress is really frustrating. But when it comes to the president, too, he's been very vocal about the process that is coming out right now, both in Congress, both when it comes to reopening the economy. What has he been saying?
Yeah, so we've heard from the president on Twitter over the past couple of days calling for Congress to get on this and pass that additional funding for the small business loans. And we saw him tweet today, and he was being very critical of Democratic leadership, calling on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to get back to Washington and do their job for the American people, echoing Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's calls as well. And what he would like to see is this happen quickly, because right now the Senate is actually on a 5-week, they're in the middle of a 5-week recess, and they come back every few days or so for a pro forma session. And not to get into the weeds in that, but basically they're not focusing on their legislative schedule like they would normally. They come in for just a little bit, a brief session, and then they adjourn. So President Trump is asking the Senate to essentially come back to Washington and get this done, the Senate and the House, or adjourn for the session. And there's not really a signal from the Senate that they're going to be adjourning, but they have scheduled several other pro forma sessions starting on Monday. So we might see some of these backdoor negotiations come to fruition on the Senate floor, and we might be seeing Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell push for that additional funding again sometime next week. We just don't know, but their recess does come to an official end on May 4th. And we might actually be seeing the Democrats get some of the concessions that they've been calling for. We know that the president held a call with representatives and senators from both sides of the aisle on Thursday to discuss reopening the economy. And Senator Roy Blunt from Missouri, a Republican from Missouri, spoke to reporters afterward, and he said that the president seemed open to the idea. He might be considering giving Democrats what they want, adding that extra money to the bill in order to get this done for the American people.
And President Trump earlier in the week actually saying that he might utilize the adjournment clause of the U.S. Constitution, which would require the House and the Senate to come in so he could pass some of his nominees. That's something that he was voicing frustration about earlier today. Never knew that existed until he brought it up. So it was interesting to learn about that. But when it comes to the status of those programs that we're talking about, mainly the loans to the small businesses, has there been any success of those programs? Is that why they're trying to get funding right back into them?
Yeah, so it was very, very popular, as you might imagine. Applications were open starting April 3rd, so in less than 2 weeks, funding ran out, meaning millions of business owners applied for those loans in order to stay afloat amid this shutdown. 1.6 million applications to be exact. That's what the Small Business Administration said yesterday. They announced that the program had hit the ceiling. They had that $349 billion. They hit that ceiling yesterday. So currently the program is frozen. So right now, small business owners can't apply. They can't get approved until that fund gets replenished. And this hits close to home as well. I heard one of my close friends actually texted me earlier today, and she was really happy because her mom got approved for her loan. So that essentially means she won't have to file for bankruptcy. So this really is putting people's livelihoods on the line. They're depending on this, and not only to pay their rent, but to pay their workers, to keep people on their payroll. Otherwise, they're going to have to start letting workers go. And we've already seen just this month alone 20 million people filing for unemployment. So this could really get worse if Congress doesn't buckle up and pass that extra legislation.
Yeah, and to that point, too, that's a big part of this package is the idea of keeping those workers on the payroll so that they continue being paid, they still get access to their benefits, and hopefully then that once the economy does open, since they're already on the payroll, that we can get the economy going once back again. We don't have to hire new people. So that's the importance of getting those loans to those small businesses, to keep them open so they can once again hit the ground running. I think that's a very important point that Congress needs to address in the near future. But Jennifer Franco, always a pleasure talking to you and having you on to break down all the news that's happening in the day. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.